You're listening to the League Bound Podcast.
Sheldon's coming again. Oh, mercy.
Your source for weekly coverage on the future stars of the NBA.
Gives it to Jenkins for the championship.
I'm your co-host, Jake Schrantz.
And I'm your co-host, Branden Blue.
With production for the podcast coming from Broderick Wilken.
With the first pick in the NBA draft.
Hello and welcome back to the League Bound Podcast, where we break down prospects and the best players in college basketball while also talking about breaking news in the basketball world. And this is episode 11, but I got to start it off by thanking our YouTube subscribers, as we have now reached 100 subscribers. And at the time of this podcast, we are currently at 136 subscribers, and I feel like that's a really good start for where we want to end up. So thank you to all the listeners and subscribers out there who enjoy our content, and we only continue to grow going forward. I'm your host, Branden Blue, and I'm here with Brody and Jake. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing all right, man. Super proud of us for getting this far with the podcast, and I think, growth going forward is the only way that's going to be moving for us.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I think our video podcasts and video content is really doing well on the channel. I think a lot of people are enjoying it. And I think our plan is that we're only going to continue to do so. So, yeah, let's get it.
All right. Well, to start it off, we're going to start this segment talking about draft reactions. And first, we're going to talk about Paolo going first, because I know that surprised a lot of people, because reports were initially saying that Jabari was supposed to go to the Magic, but that's not what ended up happening. Jake, what are your thoughts on that situation?
Yeah, I was completely surprised by that. Probably about a month or so going into the draft, it was Jabari Smith or even maybe Chet Holmgren all the way at number one. So seeing the Magic just pull off this, surprise act of holding off the secret of Paolo going number one this whole time was, I think, probably the biggest surprise of the draft, arguably. But I know, Brody, you were saying that Paolo was maybe your favorite guy going into this draft, and the Magic seemed to agree with you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't expect him to go number one because Chet, but I thought he should or deserves to go number one. And he did. And I think he earned it over March Madness. And I think he still has potential to come out on top out of all these prospects. It's still very early, but we have seen Chet going crazy so far in the Summer League.
And I want to touch on that because you said March Madness, and it's kind of interesting. You look at the order of the draft picks. Paolo was definitely the best in March Madness. He went number one. Mm-hmm. Chet was pretty solid. He went number two. And then Jabari didn't get that much of opportunity to kind of show his stuff in March. And it's kind of interesting the way that all works down as he goes number three. What do you think about that, Brandon?
I mean, yeah, I really agree with that. I mean, I remember after March Madness, too, I was thinking, the way he played with Duke, I was like, yeah, he's got to go number one, not just because of how he's playing, but he shows that he impacts winning and that his presence on the floor helps his team go far. They may not have made it to the national championship and won everything, but they made it to the Final Four, which is still incredibly hard to do. So I think Paolo really showed that what he does isn't just for show, and that it really does help his team when it matters. And moving on, also in the draft, we had the New York Knicks, who kind of fumbled the bag during the draft. They picked up Ousmane Dieng. I don't remember what pick he was exactly, but they eventually traded him. I can't remember what for. And then they acquired Jalen Duren from the Charlotte Hornets. And then they traded him to Detroit. And Detroit now has a really solid young-looking core because they got Jaden Ivy earlier in the draft, and now they have a solid big to kind of fill out their squad. So, and the Knicks, I don't really know what they were thinking, because from my perspective, they're a team that has just, they need to get somebody in the draft, whether it's a role player or whatever. And especially when you look at where they're at now, I just don't think that they've set themselves up to have a solid young core going forward.
Yeah, and in the second round, they drafted Trevor Keels from Duke, who was a solid player for the Blue Devils. But at this point in his career, how many minutes is he actually going to take away from those other young guards on the New York Knicks roster. So leaving the draft with basically just him and the cap space to eventually go bring in a Jalen Brunson was an interesting move, to say the least. But back to Jaden Ivy and Jalen Duren, like you talked about, people were saying that was maybe the steal of the draft, getting Jaden Ivy at 5 as the Kings went with Keegan Murray. We'll talk about how that may not be the case a little bit later as we get into the summer league here. But yeah, I think that was, very baffling in the moment. But you look at what they did with bringing in Jalen Brunson, they did successfully do that. And with all the options available to New York at their pick, I feel like Jalen Brunson right now is better than all of those guys. And so if Coach Tibbs and the rest of the Knicks organization are thinking they're a win-now team, bringing in the best player available, being Jalen Brunson, I guess, is the right way to go.
Yeah, but I do like the Jalen Brunson move, but I'm just confused on I just don't know what they're doing. Like, Jalen Brunson's a good player. He showed in the playoffs, but I'm just, it gives me the whole situation just gives me anxiety as a basketball fan, like for Knicks fans, especially because of, what they did with Julius Randle. Like, he had one good season, then they threw him the bag, and then he had a bad season last year, and it's like, now you're just,
and now they're trying to trade him.
Yeah, so it's like, I just don't want that to happen. I don't think it'll happen with Jalen Brunson again, but you just never know with situations like that. And because that's not like, he's not even an all-star or a superstar. So, but we'll see how that works out. Next, we have our Nebraska guy, Bryce Mcgowans. He fell a lot lower than I thought he was going to, and probably even Jake thought he was going to. And
oh yeah, 100%.
He ended up going in the second round to the Hornets. So how do you feel about that fit, Jake and Brody?
Well, I can go first real quick, and then I'll let Brody hop in.
Go ahead.
It was really tough for me to watch. I think it was Malachi Branham went to the Spurs in the first, and then I believe Max Christie and Caleb Houston, all basically the 3 young wings in the Big Ten that he was competing with in the draft, all get drafted before him. That was pretty tough to watch, but so far Caleb Houston at least has shown some pretty good stuff in the summer league. So I guess that makes sense for them. But Brody, what are you thinking about Bryce here?
Still the draft, man. Second round, this is first round talent, and you're letting him drop that far. I mean, I'm a little biased, but
yeah, I feel like Bryce has a chance if he can develop in Charlotte. We've seen them develop players like Miles Bridges, who's gotten a lot better over his last 2 or 3 years. I think LaMelo Ball, his impact on the game could help find Bryce in some open territory on the court. So I think he has a chance to be pretty successful there.
Yeah, I mean, LaMelo, the best part of his game is playmaking and just setting up people around him. And Bryce, I feel like he doesn't even, as long as he's the shooter that he's known for, I feel like he really doesn't have to do much, and he'll fit in right there. So I like the Hornets fit. Now, he has been struggling in Summer League, but again, it's just Summer League. You can't, I know we all overreact to everything, but you can't overreact to it too much. You would like to see him doing better, but I think in the long run, he'll be okay.
well, and I think with Bryce, didn't he have a 14-point performance?
Yeah, the first
14,
game, yeah.
Dropped some nice threes, and I don't know, he looks like he could definitely fit into the NBA, and we saw it in college as well.
Yeah, in college, you look at the beginning of his season, he was scoring pretty well, pretty much through the entire season. That's why we thought he was a first-round talent. But, the little intricacies of the game, the efficiency of his, season, it got a lot better as he moved on and got stronger, got more used to the level of play that he was at. So hopefully that continues into the NBA. If he's struggling right now, hopefully he has sort of a Jordan Poole-esque rise in his career. Poole was pretty bad efficiency-wise early, and now look at him. He's one of the key players on the championship team in the Warriors.
That man was shooting, I believe, 20% from the field, not even from the 3, but from the field. And now look at the role he played. So there's still time. Next, we're going to talk about next year's draft a little bit. Victor Wembanyama. I don't know if everybody listening here knows about him, but that guy is 7'5" and can make moves like Kyrie Irving. So that guy is probably going to go number 1. He's a cheat code. He's like a 2K created player. It's not real.
Pretty much.
But yeah, and next year, I think a lot of teams have already started the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes. We've got the Spurs, Pacers, and Thunder. And Jake, I wanted to ask you, which of those teams do you think will be taking the most for Victor?
I don't know if the Thunder will be actually tanking. I think they play hard every night. They're just so young where it is like extremely hard for them to compete against some of these higher level teams. But I would say the Spurs, tank wise, like by the definition of getting worse to get a better draft pick, I think they're probably the number one team that will be tanking. But I would say don't sleep on the Utah Jazz, because even if they're not tanking, they basically just have Donovan Mitchell right now. So if he goes down at any point in the season, they may be the worst team in the league.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And, I kind of have a Victor Wembanyama question for you guys, because when you're tanking for a player in any other sport, I feel like it's a little bit easier compared to the NBA, because with lottery picks, even if you're the worst team, you don't have there's a chance you don't even get that first pick. So do you guys think tanking for a player in the NBA is even worth it?
I feel like it depends on the situation. Like, maybe sometimes, okay, in the Sixers situation, like we all know that's been their thing. Like before they got Joel and Ben, they would just tank, and then you see how it worked out now. But I'm like, I think it's better to just kind of like try and like keep building, and like if the chips don't fall and you still end up getting that first pick, it's whatever, it's fine then. But when you tank, I feel like sometimes a lot of teams, they're just so focused on like being bad that they don't get the pieces in place to make them good when they finally get that one player that they want, you know? So I feel like there just has to be a lot of strategic planning to it if you're going to try it.
Well spoken.
I would say that in the NBA, with this lottery system that there is, targeted tanking, like going for a Victor Wembanyama, is a decent strategy, as, the odds do get better as you go up, but those leveled out odds in the top three now after the Zion Williamson draft year have changed a lot of strategy in terms of doing that. But I would say with a draft class like next year, and similar to the Zion class where you had Ja, you had Zion, you had RJ Barrett, those top 3 or 4 guys were seen as pretty high level talent. If you can tank for maybe a range of picks, I think that's where the sweet spot is in terms of getting the best players. Because if you know that you like the top 3 players, any which order, and you can develop any of them, that's where you want to be, because you don't want to just put all your eggs in one basket, like going for Victor and not get him, especially with how common it is to draw from 1 to 5, just basically odds wise. So, but this class does have other players other than Victor next year. You have the Thompson brothers, who have looked really impressive coming into their draft eligible year as well. So I think this draft class could be another outstanding one for us to cover.
Yeah, I agree. But going back to who we think will be tanking, I just want to talk about the Spurs, because they have made it clear already that they want Victor, because they were stuck in, I guess, what you would call like no man's land for a while, where they had a few good players, but they weren't going to win like a chip or really contending. And their best player was DeJounte Murray, a player who they were pretty much building their franchise around. And they were just like, you know what? We're tired of this. We're just going to trade him to the Hawks for a few first-round picks. And I think that the Spurs have gone all in on trying to get this man, because I did not see this coming. I didn't think DeJounte Murray was going to be traded. But I think they saw that video of him cooking Rudy Gobert like when he was 16 years old or whatever, and just said, we got to throw all our cards in on him. So
how do you think Pops is reacting to this?
That's a good question, because Pops has been known as a guy who's like, he just wants to win. And like, I never thought he would be in a position as a coach where he would have to tank, honestly. Like, even a few years back when they had DeJounte, DeMar, and LaMarcus Aldridge, like, I figured they would at least get something going. But now I don't know how he feels, quite honestly. I'm sure this season's probably going to be a little bit tough for him, but he'll get through it.
If I could throw one last team that could potentially even have a chance at getting into the top maybe 3 or 4, is the Brooklyn Nets. And if you look at them right now, they don't have any of their first round picks because like most of those are going to the Houston Rockets, right? Because of James Harden. But if they make trades of Kyrie Irving possibly going to the Lakers and Kevin Durant moves and they get however many picks from that, that may be the worst roster in the entire NBA. And if they get some teams first round picks this year, who knows how that could work out? Maybe they get maybe they trade Durant to a team that's young but up and coming, and maybe something happens randomly where they still get a good pick. So never sleep on any of these teams, especially a team that's about to trade their 2 best players.
I think over the next over our entire season of covering college basketball and the NBA and the draft, we're going to keep checking in on who's tanking the hardest for Victor, because he is just that crazy of a player where, like, I think we'll just be talking about the team to get him all year, because the team that gets him, quite frankly, is going to be a completely different team the next year that he is on that roster. So,
moving on to the Summer League. We are going to do a little Summer League tier list of some of the top draft picks that we've seen so far through these first 2 or 3 games. And right now for tier 1, we have Paulo and Keegan. Jake, how do you feel about this tier list?
I mean, there's no other way to say it. Everyone's seen that Orlando Magic versus Sacramento Kings Summer League game. That the intensity between those 2 teams and trying to win that, and just the absolute star matchup in the Summer League between Paulo Banchero and Keegan Murray was something to watch. We've all seen that late 3 from Keegan Murray in the clutch. That was like Reggie Miller-esque clutchness from Keegan Murray. That's been really impressive. And he is just very similar to how he'd been at Iowa. He's basically just taking good shots and making a very, very high percentage of them. So Keegan Murray, we talked about it a little earlier in the podcast. People thought Jaden Ivy going 5th behind Murray was maybe the steal of the draft. But so far, Keegan Murray has said, I'm worth that 4th pick. Kings are getting a good player out of me. And, don't just underrate me because I'm maybe a little bit older.
Yeah. I mean, Keegan, I'm not going to talk about his skill that much because we all see it right now, but I really like his mindset, because he reminds me of like someone who just wakes up, eats, sleeps, like almost kind of like a Kawhi a little bit. Like he's just like, I'm going to eat, sleep, and, drink basketball, and then that's all I'm going to do. Because like I was looking at some of his interviews too, and he just had that demeanor about him, like, I'm just here to work, go home, and that's all I want to do. It's really nice to see. He reminds me, he's from Iowa too, so he reminds me of like your typical hardworking Midwesterner. It's just really, I really like to see this, and I think he can really change the Kings' misfortune around. But I'm really hoping that things work out for him and that he does have a good career.
It's kind of funny to watch him on the court because he's kind of just, you think about the thoughts in his head. It's like, oh, you're going to leave me open? Oh, I'm just going to make this 3-pointer now. Yeah. Oh, you're going to let me back you down? I'm just going to turn around and just shoot this jumper over you real quick. Like, it's so insane to watch. But Paulo as well, compared to Keegan, has, I would say, been the most maybe important to their one team, because he's only 19 or 20 years old, and he's just been by far the best player on the Magic Summer League team. And he may come into the Magic regular season team and be their best player. We don't even know.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that's stuck out with me from Paulo, especially during Summer League, is that, one, they're playing in such a faster game now, and I feel like his athleticism is on so much more display. I feel like when he was in college, we all knew he was athletic, but you saw a lot more half court sets and just a more fundamental game, I guess you would say. And so we didn't really have to see him run around, sprint, block shots like this. But I feel like every possession I'm seeing him utilize his athleticism. And so to me, it just I really see why the Magic, I didn't think it was a bad pick in the first place, but I really see why they wanted to take him with their first pick. Oh, also his playmaking too has been really good. His basketball IQ has been, I kind of forgot how good it was. I can't lie, but yeah, he's been phenomenal.
Yeah, it might be the most underrated skill from him. We've seen that swing pass that he had lefty all the way to the corner to Caleb Houston for that 3, and that could be an interesting lineup. You bring in maybe Paulo at the 4 Franz Wagner at the 3, Caleb Houston at the 2, two good shooters along with him. Maybe bring in Cole Anthony as the point guard, and then whoever wants to play the 5, maybe it's Wendell Carter, Mo Bamba, who knows. But this Magic team, as long as Paulo stays consistent and keeps growing his game, I think they could be pretty solid, honestly.
Yeah. And they've got the pieces around him too, so the Magic could be scary in the years to come. And on tier 2, we have Chet and Jaden Ivy. Now, Jaden Ivy, he had an injury, but I don't think it was like super serious. So I think right now, I think that he's out for the rest of Summer League. But from what we saw in that first game and like a quarter that we saw, Jaden Ivy, he's really one of my favorite players to watch in this class outside of probably Paulo. And I think he's a sleeper for Rookie of the Year right now, if I'm being honest. But yeah, he played really well.
Yeah, I think before he got injured, I think Jaden Ivey had like 10 points or something in 2 minutes. So, and then he got injured. So I think I was reading an article maybe by Fansided where they said it wasn't a big injury, but most likely he'll be sitting out, which will kind of be annoying, but wanted to see him play a little bit more. But Chet Holmgren in that first game he looked like he was playing, against some of those lower level West Coast Conference teams. He was just all over the place. But after that, he's kind of slowed down a little bit. So hopefully he gets it going, but that's where he's kind of sitting in this second tier behind Paulo and Keegan Murray.
One thing I will say, I know earlier in the podcast, I've been like, I don't think Chet's going to be the best player in this class. I still think that, but I can say I'm a little bit higher on him after these like first 2 or 3 games I've seen, just because I realized at Gonzaga, like a lot of my gripes that I've had were just that he was really just being underused. Like the way Mark Few was using him, it was pretty much like just a pick and pop center, or like he would just do little post ups. But I feel like he wouldn't really utilize him to his full potential. But like the Thunder,
it was a Drew Timme system.
Yeah, with the Thunder, they're like more willing to let him handle the ball, which is why people were so high on him coming into college. And just seeing that, I feel like has kind of improved how I feel about him. I didn't think he was going to be a bust to begin with, but I feel a lot better about him. But also on the defensive side, he's been good, but he's an interesting player on defense because he's somebody who will get like 6 blocks a game, but then he could go up against somebody like Joel Embiid and just get back down into like the stands. So it's always funny to see that. But I would still like to see him play the 4 a little bit, but I think we're going to have to wait a while to see that until the Thunder get another solid center. But yeah, he's been a fun player to watch too.
One thing I will say about the point like you made guarding some of those bigger guys for Chet Holmgren, it just really irks me because, I mean, it's so lazy, I feel like, by some of the media when they talk about how, oh, Chet is so skinny. How is he going to guard like a Joel Embiid? And I'm just thinking, I have to like rack my brain and think of guys in the NBA who are like, literally, you look at the All-Stars, the All-NBA players, who is just going out there and just going out and guarding Joel Embiid one-on-one?
Yeah.
Like, nobody's doing that. He's averaging like 27 a game. So I don't understand why they throw Chet under the bus for not being able to guard these like almost 300-pound guys. When you look at your favorite players like Anthony Davis defensively, he can't just go set one-on-one with Joel Embiid and just shut him down. That's not how the NBA works. And I also saw a great point made, I think it was on Kevin O'Connor's podcast. They were talking about some of these bigger guys aren't going to be able to guard Chet offensively. So most of the time, they're not even going to be on the court playing against him because he's just going to pick them apart offensively with his speed and ball handling. So you put a guy, I mean, Embiid has the defensive capabilities being with that size to guard Chet, but some of these other lesser talented guys, but like we'll say like the Andre Drummond type of build, they're not going to be able to guard Chet Holmgren on the perimeter. So they might not even be in the game. So he won't even have to worry about guarding a guy like that.
All right. Jabari Smith Jr. Where's he at?
Well,
Okay.
I mean, it's interesting. You look at the draft order for Jabari going 3rd, and he has definitely been the least impressive out of the top 3. I don't know if it's who he's playing with Houston or what it is, but he has just not been able to get his shot going at all.
Yeah. Honestly, with a player like Jabari, And this kind of goes into Chet a little bit too. I'm really not surprised that they're having struggles just because I feel like the players who are doing really well, like mainly Paulo and Jaden, like they're just players who have crazy athleticism. So I feel like it's easier for them to translate off rip. But for Jabari, who's a little bit, he definitely relies a lot more on like his basketball IQ and his shooting. That's not going to translate. Well, shooting might, but just knowing where you're supposed to be on the floor and like what works for your game, that's not going to work right off the bat coming into the league. So that's just something that comes with time. But I've seen flashes from Jabari, and I still think he's going to be a good player. I am a little bit curious about that fit with the Rockets. I don't think it's going to like not work, but I just think it's going to be an interesting fit. But
if anything, the fit can work at the moment just because they traded away Christian Wood, which was somebody who would definitely get those, maybe power forward or even at the center sometime, those type of minutes with Jabari Smith. But now that they don't have him, that opens up some of the minutes in that position, but he's definitely going to have to show out against, some of the competition on this Rockets roster. You have Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. They're your main shot takers. So his scoring potential, at least in his rookie year, I think is way lower than someone like Paolo Banchero, or even like a Chet Holmgren, because he's just not going to get the amount of shots that those guys are going to get, being the main kind of offensive juggernauts of their team.
And Jabari, like you said, that's kind of his strong suit, and scoring is like the thing that makes him most valuable. And he does have a lot of two-way potential, but I just don't think we're going to see maybe a lot of offensive success from him like his first year, maybe later on in the season when he finds his groove. But I feel like it'll also be good for Jabari because he'll have to find other ways to be, exceptional, especially without a playmaker too. So that'll be interesting to see. But yeah. Moving on, we also have another interesting player who we've talked about before on this podcast. I personally, I was really excited to see him play against Jaden Ivy too. And I turned on the game and he only played 2 minutes, shot 3 shots, scored 2 points, and then he never came back off the bench. So Shaedon Sharpe, I want to hear what your thoughts are on him, Jake.
I think it has to be a concern at this point because hasn't played in basically a year with moving over to Kentucky, now playing very little minutes in the summer league. This is the time for a guy like him who is, one of the youngest high-level prospects in the draft. You have to show out and start to develop this early because you're coming in, you're playing with Damian Lillard, all right? This is one of the best players in the league, and he doesn't have time to just sit and watch you go 3 for 11 because you don't know how to play the game at this level. So I wouldn't be surprised if Shaedon Sharpe kind of gets a wake-up call in Portland. But, fair enough. 2 minutes, 2 points. It's not a terrible ratio.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to see much of him really playing it in Portland, if I'm being honest, this year, at least, because I think about they're technically rebuilding, but I don't think they have a need to really play him because, like you said, they have Damian Lillard, they have Anthony Simons, so it's like, or Anthony Simmons. I don't know why they would feel the need to play him when they've already got good guards in front of him. Like he might get a little bit of time later on in the year, but like you said, he hasn't played any college, which I feel like is a real big gap to miss between college or between high school and the NBA, just because I feel like not only is it good for getting playing experience, but that's also a time for you to learn more about the game, especially from somebody like Coach Calipari, who's an all-time great coach. So that, I feel like, kind of hurt him a little bit. But I talked about Anthony Simmons, and I think that he'll be kind of like him, where he won't play a lot his first year, but he'll kind of blow up his second and third year, and eventually everybody will be really high on him, and we'll see the greatness that he wants, or the greatness.
Anthony Simons could even give Shaedon Sharpe some of the business. I mean, he's looking at Shaden Sharp, he's like, I'm 23. I'm putting up 40 in a game. Like, what are you doing? Like, Shaden Sharp's got to figure it out, man.
Yeah. I think Anthony Simons and Shaden Sharp are kind of similar, though, because I know Anthony Simons, he came out of IMG and didn't go to college, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I feel like he could be a little bit of a mentor even to him, too, and just kind of, like, show him, like, hey, I know kind of what it's like to not play college and just kind of come straight from high school, but these are kind of the steps you need to take to make it in the league without having that traditional route, you know. But
that is a good fit with Portland because you have Simons, like you just said, similar position to how Sharp came into the league. Damian Lillard went to very small school, I think Weber State, and you know that's kind of important because he was kind of slept on in that way. Wasn't a big school kind of guy. People had low expectations for him. People don't know what their expectations are for Shaden Sharp, so that could be a big thing. And then you bring in Jeremy Grant with the Portland Trailblazers as well. He was a guy that was kind of underutilized for most of his career until he finally took that step a little bit in Denver and then eventually made that big step in Detroit and kind of showed out there. So 3 guys who were kind of underappreciated for different portions of their career and now have a chance to make, you know, this concoction of an amazing player as Shaden Sharp could be.
So let's move on from some of our top draft picks and let's just talk about some other impressive performances that we saw in Summer League. And this young Warriors team has been performing throughout, which honestly isn't a surprise because they are a lot of lottery picks that just didn't get to play much, and now they're on full display. So Jonathan Kaminga last night did really well. Moses Moody in the first game, he was phenomenal. We also saw James Wiseman play for the first time in like a year and a half last night. So this Warriors future are just showing the young core that they have, and I think that these guys we all saw yesterday are going to play a bigger role, especially with the loss of a lot of the Warriors free agents like Gary Payton, Damian Lee. So, yeah, I'm excited for this Warriors team.
Well, you look at Jonathan Kaminga even as who I would say Moses Moody had the best game so far in the Summer League for the Warriors with that 34 piece versus the Knicks. That came in a loss, though. But Kaminga yesterday he had almost 30 points in that one. And he could be so impressive in the Summer League, and he probably won't even start again this year as they have Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green still starting at the 3 and the 4. So Kaminga will definitely be a big-time bench player for them, coming with maybe Jordan Poole off the bench. It's kind of scary the way the Warriors are just taking this modern-day dynasty and just shifting it into the future, you know, piece by piece. We'll see if Wiseman develops like they want him to, but you have 3 to 4 guys on your bench right now that are up-and-coming stars, but the biggest thing with them is they have to eventually keep them. You have all this money invested in the starting lineup, and sooner or later, these guys' contracts are going to be coming up, and they're going to want the money that they've earned through their young career. So we'll see if the Warriors can keep them.
Yeah, I feel like that's why it's really important to just win with the pieces you have now, because inevitably, I think, especially if they keep performing, I don't know how much longer we're going to see Curry, Clay, Green all playing like they're going to, but eventually those players are, like you said, going to want more money. And with all due respect, like they're all really good. Don't get me wrong. Like I know we just said they're good, but without Curry, Thompson, Green, I still don't really know if that's going to be they're going to be your second reigning dynasty. Like Kaminga is probably the best player there, but outside of him, I don't know if that's really the pieces you need to keep winning a championship on your own. So we'll see.
I feel like eventually they're going to just have to make that shift. Like, I don't think you can kind of keep a little bit of the old, bring in most of the new. Like, eventually they're going to have to, if they really like him that much, eventually you're just going to have to sacrifice a Klay Thompson to kind of elevate Jordan Poole, or you're going to have to sacrifice a Draymond Green to bring in a Jonathan Kuminga. So it will be, got to get your popcorn ready to see in the next few years how the Warriors value these older assets. Because obviously you're not just going to drop off Steph Curry. You're going to keep him there, career Golden State Warrior. So he's probably the only one that is fully 100% secure in his spot. But, I mean, these young guys are pretty impressive, man. It's going to be a tough decision.
Next up, I want to talk about a guy that we here at League Bound predicted would do well.
Yes, sir. You made a video about it, too.
Yeah, Jayden Hardy. This guy was coming into this college season. He was the second player in the top 100, but he played for the G League Ignite. A lot of scouts weren't happy with some of what they saw, but he came out in his first summer league game and he balled out, scoring 28 points. So shout out to Jaden Hardy. I think he plays later tonight too, so I'm definitely going to have my eyes glued on that game.
And
well, Jaden Hardy, go ahead, Brody.
I think, G League Ignite is probably a pretty big future for a lot of recruits coming forward. We'll have to keep following Jaden Hardy this season, see where he goes. But, man, it really looks like it could be a secure spot for a lot of top picks to just not go to college anymore and just go to the G League Ignite, play against former NBA talent, and get NBA level teaching. But yeah, go ahead about.
Yeah, and you look at the box score for Jaden in that game with just under 30 points. Obviously, he's not going to do that every game against like NBA regular season players, like veterans. But you take away maybe 4 or 5 of those makes, that's still like 15 points per game from a Jaden Hardy who's like, 19, 20 years old. So I think the Mavericks have a pretty good player in Jaden Hardy. And it's kind of scary to match him up with Luka Doncic, but, like you said, League Bound, we all thought this a top prospect coming into the college year, but I don't know why people were sleeping on him. He had almost 20 points per game and against NBA talent, like regardless of the efficiency, even college players can't do that most of the time. So I think he was maybe the most slept on prospect.
Yeah. Like you said, with the Mavs fit being scary, I feel like they're kind of getting what they lost in Jalen Brunson right back. I mean, he's not going to be like that immediately, more likely than not, but give it a few years, and if things are still going right with the Mavs and they still have Luka and they're able to make stuff shake, I think that's going to be a scary fit long term.
And Spencer Dinwiddie's not young either. He's getting up there. Like, he's not old, but the future is not super bright in terms of like his development moving forward. We kind of know what you're going to get with the Spencer Dinwiddie. So if they end up not bringing him back in the next few years, I think Jaden Hardy definitely has the potential to just step right into that role and maybe even surpass how good Dinwiddie has been for them.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I would also like to take this time to shout out my KU guys, Ochai Agbaji and Christian Brown. They played each other yesterday, I believe, and it was a fun little matchup. The Nuggets won, but it was nice to see my guys in NBA uniforms going up against each other. They both had really good debuts, too. CB was catching a lot of lobs and dunks, so that was really nice to see. And I feel like he showed off what he's going to bring immediately into the season when October gets around. So I'm excited for both of those guys.
One of the funniest things in their game yesterday was when they were guarding each other. It was so funny to see that neither of them could really get off any of their game. Like, They just know each other so well from their college days. So watching Christian Brown guard a guy like Agbaji, it was just like, I know exactly what you're going to do, so you can't do anything right now.
Yeah. I think it really showed, too, like, just what makes them championship competitors, because they're like, I'm not going to let you get the best of me. And I don't really think the Nuggets won, but I don't really think that one really got the better of other. It was really a tough matchup to see. So
I think that was our last topic here, and I think we've had a pretty successful podcast back here. I know we're all in complete other parts of the country in comparison to each other right now, but in about a month or so, we'll be back together, and online podcasts won't quite be a thing anymore, which will be nice. But I think this has gone pretty well, and you guys want to wrap it for them?
Yeah, it's been so fun to get back into this podcast format with you guys. Like we said earlier, super thankful and proud of ourselves for reaching that goal of 100 subscribers. Only way is up now. We see ourselves growing a lot in the future, next maybe couple months. And we've got some other content coming toward you guys in terms of videos and other podcasts. But thank you all for watching and listening. Make sure you follow us on social media. You can follow me at Jacob Schrantz on Twitter and Instagram.
And you can follow me on Instagram at Branden.Blue.
And you can follow me on at Broderick Wilken on Instagram and at Brody Wilken on Twitter. And also Broderick Wilken on YouTube. Be sure to follow the League Bound podcast wherever that may be. So we have YouTube and Spotify. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can also listen to us on Spotify, which is just League Bound, and our YouTube channel is also just League Bound. So thanks again for everyone for watching this podcast. We really appreciate you. Like, subscribe, all that stuff, and have a good one.
See ya.